everyone. It's good to see you all. Welcome to our 30 by 30 with Ric Campo, the CEO and chairman of Camden Property Trust and a 2022 inductee of the Texas Business Hall of Fame. We're lucky to have a guest moderator here today, our alumni from Texas Tech. We funded him in 2016, Michael Metz. Who's the co-founder of DH Capital, a real estate investment firm. And he is also the co-founder of Integro Bank, an Arizona-based bank catering to small businesses, nonprofits, and startups. I'll be contacting you, Michael, for some financial assistance after this call. No, I'm just kidding. So normally you all have seen Ric's bio. Normally I would do a quick bio before I turn things over to Michael, but we're going to do something special today because David Weekley introduced Ric Campo as an inductee last year and probably did the best introduction in the history of this organization. So we're going to play just an abbreviated piece of that intro is Ric's bio today. And then Michael, I'm going to turn things over to you. And before we push play on that, if you have a question today, after Michael's asked Ric a few questions, please just chat me that you have a question. I don't need to know the question. Just tell me you want to ask one and I'll pass that along to Michael and he'll call on you and you can ask your question live. Okay, so let's roll this intro.
As CEO of Camden Property Trust, I got to tell you the video, which I didn't get to see till tonight, took a lot of my speech. But anyway, if you can think about it, going public in 1993 with 200 million in assets, and today with 20 billion in assets, 30 years later, that's 100 times. Not a bad businessman, right? I'm glad I'm a stockholder. It's been a great run. And Ric and Keith Oden, his partner, you know, I love companies that create great cultures, and to be on that list of Fortune's 100 best place to work and be based here in Houston is an incredible credit to him and his company and Keith, and I really appreciate and laud him for that. And the only problem I have with that is that he ends up head of our company most years. But he's really done an awesome job. And I really don't know of anybody that's quite done all the things that Ric has done in terms of the community. He started out serving as the first chairman of the Houston First Corporation, which was a public-private partnership that was put together to bring more people into Houston. And he had the idea to go spend $350 million and redo the convention center. And then he brought the Marriott Marquis, a 1,000-room hotel. And then he figured out how to do tax incentives for folks downtown to take old, dilapidated buildings and turn them into the boutique hotels we have today. I mean, he's a finance genius, and he did this for the city, and it's awesome. I mean, currently that creates over $100 million a year in hotel tax for the city. And then he does that, and then he moves on to something that's easy, chairman of the Super Bowl committee. I mean, how hard could that be, right? And so he does that and brings into Houston more than $350 million as a Super Bowl committee. Then he moves on. Somebody asked him to be chairman of the Harris County Sports Association. Can you imagine trying to finance one stadium? How about two stadiums? How about three stadiums that he financed that bless our city today in the early 2000s? It's amazing. It's incredible. And then, as a port commissioner, to go to Washington after 15 years of talking and wrangling and doing all the political things that go on, to go get $1 billion from Washington to Houston to widen and deepen the port, to get the largest tankers in the world and freight ships into Houston is incredible. So I've got to tell you, I don't know of anybody that's had more impact on the city of Houston in our lives and our economic future than Ric Campo.
Okay. I've watched that so many times.
Like a eulogy.
I mean, Rick, we are so lucky to have you here today. So we need to, I mean, wow, just wow. And thank you for all you've done for Houston and for the state of Texas, of course. So with all that being said, Michael, good luck following that intro, but I know you're going to do great with your questions. So go ahead.
Thanks again for being here, Rick. We appreciate your time. The first question is, what do you consider to be your greatest achievement?
That's easy. My greatest achievement is my family. It's building it's like building a business, really, when you get down to it, right? Having kids is easy, raising them is not, and then making sure that they have the right values and they can stand on their own and be good, productive citizens is really hard to do, and I would say that's number one for sure. And now that I have 7 grandkids from those kids, and they all live 10 minutes from my house, so they pop over all the time, and so making sure those grandkids get the same upbringing that my kids did is going to be fun to watch and be involved in.
Awesome. And which historical figure would you most like to meet?
You know, that's an interesting. I thought about that a lot. I asked my wife what she thought, and our historical figures were different for sure. Hers were more women. I would say it would be Benjamin Franklin, and for this reason, because he was one of the authors of the Declaration of Independence and the starting of our country, and set up the government the way it is, the way it's been for the last hundreds of years. And so I would like to meet him, and then I would like to bring him to the current environment today, our politically charged, polarized world, and say, is this what you expected? And what would you do differently maybe to help change that? And then I love the fact that he was this big inventor and always doing something interesting and different.
And then flipping over to today, what current public figure do you most admire?
I would have to say it'd be a business guy. It would be Warren Buffett, and primarily because not so much of his success, but his down-to-earth view of the world, and thinking about when you think about how he makes investment decisions and how he thinks about the world, it's really basic. It's not complicated. It's not rocket scientist. It's all about values and doing the right thing and running your company in a very, very responsible way. And then the fact that he's given all his money away, it is pretty amazing. And I love the fact that he's, I think, either 90 or a little above 90 and still doing it.
And he's a Hall of Fame inductee.
Yes.
He's one of our few non-Texans, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great. The next question is, what is your most treasured possession?
My most treasured possession is a book that my grandmother wrote about her journey. It was basically about her life, but it was her journey as a little kid coming from Spain to America. And she wrote it in longhand, and it's a great immigrant story, and it inspires me to try to do better and to understand that everyone has a different story, but it's always the same. Really, when we get down to it, it's family, it's creating value in your community and wanting to belong to a community, and I think that's definitely my most prized possession.
That's awesome that you still have that in the family. And the next question is, do you have a personal motto?
I do, actually. I have 2. And the first one would be suffer fools gladly. And I think for those of you, that it's kind of a biblical reference. And it's the idea is that when you have somebody who's a fool in front of you, you don't just slap them out of the way and tell them they're a fool. You suffer that fool and try to improve that fool's situation. And I tell my family all the time, you don't just blow up at somebody because you're mad. You have to suffer that fool gladly and then ultimately try to do something to help that fool. The other one is similar, but it's don't lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate anyone who does. And that's actually part of the motto from, I think it's part of the Naval Academy or the Air Force Academy, the Academy's kind of thing that they say to their students.
Next
I love
question.
your, oh, sorry, Michael, I was
No, go ahead.
interrupting. I tend to interject. I love your first motto because that's contrary to what we hear in today's society, which is to not suffer any fools. And I love that.
You read her off. I've done a lot of really good business things with people that were the most awful, worst people to ever deal with. And suffering their foolishness allowed me to make the deal and get it done. And if I didn't suffer that, I wouldn't be where I am today without suffering many, many, many fools along the way.
Good motto.
It is. Next question is, when and where are you the happiest?
I'm happiest. There's no where really, but I'm happiest when I'm hanging out with my grandkids and with my family, and I do that kind of in lots of different places and lots of different times. So I don't really have a where. And people will ask me. I spend the summer in Lake Tahoe, which because Houston and Texas generally are pretty darn hot, and so in our high degrees, high temperature there is like 80 with no humidity. But on the other hand, it's not. To me, it's not about where; it's about who and what, and it's about my family and hanging with them and being in the moment with them and not like thinking I want to be somewhere else, which I never do.
So which talent would you most like to have? If you could add a talent.
I had a talent. Oh man, I would love to be able to remember everybody's name.
Yeah.
I'm really awful at that. And so that would be a great talent. I know one of my board members has that talent. And if he meets you one time, he'll always remember your name no matter what. Even if it's 20 years later, he'll remember. And I think that'd be a great talent to have.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And the final scripted question we have is, if you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
Got to change one thing. That was a hard one for me because I never think about that, because if I'm going to change something, I'll just do it. Maybe something you can't, like maybe I'd like to be taller. I don't know. So if I think about, I would say that if I could change one thing, I would change my proclivity to be a major procrastinator and never doing anything until I have to. And that probably would help me, but on the other hand, seemed to work okay, so I haven't been able to change it.
Procrastination is the number one thing people say on these series.
Is that
they'll
right?
change. Yeah. How did all these procrastinators get so far in life? It encourages me because I'm a procrastinator. So
Yeah, I think it's just that you wait till the last minute, and then you have to put all your energy in it to get it done, right? And it's worked for me pretty effectively, even though it definitely stresses you some, and that stress would probably be better used somewhere else, maybe. I don't know.
yeah. There's a great Harvard Business Review article they did in like the 90s on constructive procrastination, and I keep it in my desk to validate myself on a regular basis, because I do think sometimes solutions happen
send
during
it
that
to me. That would help.
time.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael, I think I sent you the first question, so I think it's Barton's up.
Yeah, go ahead, Barton.
Hi, Rick. I'm Barton Cromings. I was an awardee in 2018. And my question is industry specific, economy specific. There's a lot of talk about a pending CRE, commercial real estate crisis.
Sure.
And a lot of it involves around 4 issues in my mind: the occupancy rates, the valuations, the interest rates, and then the aging structures. David Weekley, in his introduction, talked about your plan for dilapidated downtown structures for Houston. How big do you see this as being for Texas, given the way its economy is working versus other states? And then also, which of those need to be addressed the most or will have the most effect? And how would you deal with that for Houston specifically?
Well, that's a big question. But let me hit the broad picture first, and then if I miss part of it, just remind me. So first of all, commercial real estate generally Your points are well taken. You know, valuations are down big time. Just to give you a sense, and the public companies tend to go further down faster and sooner than the private market. So let's just take my company as an example. So today our stock price is trading at $97 a share, which puts us at about a $10 billion market cap. When David Weekley introduced me, we were a $20 billion market cap. So we've lost half of our market value roughly in the last, 8 or 9 months or 12 months, plus or minus. And the reason is that property values are down at least 20% across the board, and in some cases, depending on the property type, down more. And primarily because interest rates drive everything. Our Camden's cost of capital, for example, has gone up 400 basis points. Now that sounds it's a lot, but when you think about it as a percentage of our original cost of capital, it's doubled my cost of capital almost. And so that's created a situation. For example, in my company, I have about $1.5 billion of development projects that are in the wings where we own the land and could start development tomorrow. And of those, that $1.5 billion, only about 300 million make economic sense today. So the other $1.2 billion is not going to get started anytime soon. We'll keep the land, and then ultimately, as the world changes, we'll start construction when that happens. But when the world changes, but right now, that's not gonna. We're not going to change. We're not going to build. So fundamentally, and I sit on the board of the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank Houston branch. I was actually up in Dallas at the Dallas Fed meeting that preceded the FOMC meeting last week. And commercial real estate is a big risk and a big concern of the Fed. And just to throw out a couple numbers, there's $1.9 trillion of commercial real estate debt that matures between now and 2025. And of that, a lot of it's floating rate debt. And when you have your debt costs double on you as a result of the floating rate debt or the changes in interest rates, that has a significant effect on your cash flow and a significant effect on the value. The worst part of the real estate market, multifamily is actually probably, and industrial and even retail is probably okay. And there's not a lot of real high risk for real estate defaults there. One area that is a big area is office. And the office market today, if you look at broadly speaking, there's probably over half of the office buildings in America are underwater to their debt. And if you look at, I've talked to several folks that run that are major office folks, and they believe in some of these portfolios are underwater. Maybe 70-80% of the buildings are their value is under the debt level. And the challenge with office buildings is that Class A and Class B plus office buildings are probably okay because that's where people want to go. But the Class C and D and the B minuses are probably functionally obsolete today. And the challenge with those is that they really you can't put enough money in to make the value proposition work in those buildings. And they have to be converted to something else. And what David was talking about was we converted a bunch of old office buildings into hotels in downtown Houston, used a lot of tax credits and other mechanisms to get that done. But unfortunately, a lot of stranded suburban office buildings really can't be hotels or apartments or anything else, and they probably need to get torn down. So I think there is a risk that commercial real estate continues to be a problem if rates stay as high as they are for longer. But right now, it's sort of a slow train wreck, if you want to call it that.
Thank you for that.
Get all your questions?
Yeah.
Yes, that hit all that. Do you see any type of solution that
Yeah,
folks can turn
so
to?
the only solution you have in real estate, and this is like any long date, if you think about the risk that people have in real estate generally, and any kind of long-term asset like this, is that time heals all wounds generally, as long as you can survive till the end, till the wound is healed. And unfortunately, if you have short-term debt or floating rate debt, and you have to refinance before the market's fixed, then what happens is you lose your property, you go bankrupt. And in real estate, I've been in the real estate business for 40 years, and the only people that blow up are the people that are highly leveraged, highly floating rate debt that have to refinance or do something when the markets are shut down. And right now the markets are pretty much shut down. I mean, multifamily sales volume compared to last year, for example, is down 75 or 77% across America. So if you have to sell your property or refinance it today because you were betting, you financed a long-term asset with short-term debt, you'll have problems. But the market always self-corrects in the future. And the office building market may be a little different because all the work from home and you don't need as much space and things like that. But like apartments, retail, industrial, those will all self-correct over time. The key is making sure that you are standing when the market does improve.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have Samuel Kimmel.
Hey, Mr. Campo. It's good to see you again. We're both alumni of the 2022 class, and we actually spoke for a little bit after the lunch.
Yes, I remember.
And that was really interesting conversation. I promise my question's not as technical. It's just what sort of advice or suggestions do you have for somebody who wants to create an inclusive work environment that employees want to be a part of?
That's a big issue today, for sure. So I think that you can talk a lot about about how you do it. So to me, the way it's pretty simple when you get down to it, and that is number one, you have to figure out where you are, right? You do an analysis. Where am I? Which means you have to do population analysis. What race mix do you have? What male, female, all those things. And once you know where you are, you have to decide where do you want to go. And then what you have to do is go do it. And the challenge that most companies have is they just don't go do it. And going and doing it means that you have to, it doesn't mean you put a quota and say, I need X number of Black people or X number of Hispanics or X number of women. But if your base is you don't have many women in your organization or you don't have any people of color, you have to go get more women and more people of color, right? And so it's not about quotas per se, but it's about just going and doing it. And oftentimes people will not just get that simple. They'll go, oh, I want you to interview, or they'll put in things like when you have a position interview with, I want you to make sure you interview people of color, and so we got to have 3 Hispanics or African Americans and 2 women, and then they don't say, and I want that. And so in my case, for example, my folks know we don't have a quota, but my folks know that if we have somebody competing for a position and they're as qualified as somebody else, or if they have some issues that we need to help them with to get to that next level, we need to do that. You have to build the bench so that when people are ready and you have the position, you can get that filled. And I think it's as simple as that. Unfortunately, we spend a lot of time talking about process and how do we make people, or how do we get people to do it on their own? And what you have to say is, okay, I want it done, and you got to go do it. And then you make sure that you're constantly following up with people, making sure that happens.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Next in the queue, we have Ana Almaros.
Hi, Rick. Thank you so much for spending time with us today to chat. I really appreciate it. So my name's Ana Almares. I'm an awardee of this year for the Harvey E. Najum Future Texas Business Legend Award. And my question is, what do you think was the most significant or biggest challenge that you faced in your career, and how do you think it developed you into the leader you are today?
My biggest challenge, I would say early on, it was being insecure about not knowing what I didn't know. And I think a lot of people will, so I didn't really know. I started out as an accountant, and I wasn't really a good accountant to start with, but I became a great accountant and a great finance person. And then I expanded that into lots of other things. But I remember the biggest issue I had was I didn't know. So I would early on not push myself to figure it out, and almost like the concept of fake it till you make it. And I tell a lot of my the women that work at Camden and people that I talk to a lot and men tend to be more fake it till you make it. My resume isn't perfect, but I'm going to go ahead and go get it. And women tend to be more technical in that. Oh, I'm not qualified, so they don't go ask for the order, or the job. And so I would say that was a big issue. And then what I started doing is just, for me, I just kept pushing and kind of sink or swim kind of scenarios. And where oh, I can do construction, huh? What does that mean? And then you sort of talk to everybody about, so I don't really know how to do it to start with, but then by the time I'm in the middle of it, I'm become an expert and I'm pretty darn good at it. And so I think that idea that you have to push yourself to get there, and even though you don't have it, you can get on the job training to get it. And so that to me is one of the most important kind of things that I learned to do, and it's helped me in everything. For example, David Weekley talked about the port, and when I was recruited to be the chairman of the Port Authority, which is a multi-billion-dollar operation, I had no clue about ports, right? I don't know anything about ships. I don't know anything about any of that. But it didn't take that long to figure it out, because I understand the language of business and language of how things work, right? And so I took the risk of figuring it out before when I took the job, and they assumed that I could, and I have, and it's been good. So that's what my suggestion would be.
Thank you.
Sure.
Wade McCrory, you are up next.
Hello, Mr. Campo. How are you?
Good.
Thank you again for doing this. I was an alumni from last year in 2022, so I was there for your induction as well, and just wanted to congratulate you again. But I am huge on customer experience. I was with Chick-fil-A for 5 years at their support center, and so I learned a lot of things to do with the customer experience. So now in my business, Down Outdoor Entertainment, I am huge on customer experience, and I love working on it. So I was wondering, whenever your team discusses a new project or plans to launch like a new concept company-wide, or developing a new building, or whatever it might be within the company itself, is the customer experience ever is that one of the big conversations you have? Or if not, or if so, what does that conversation go like? What are some of the questions you might ask?
Absolutely. Customer experience is, when you think about in our business, we rent apartments every day. People live at our apartments. So 100,000 plus people live at Camden. And we think about customer experience every single moment, because that's when you think about our customers are making a financial decision that is probably a very big one for them, right? I mean, it's a $25,000 to $50,000 commitment. And so we want them to have an amazing customer experience to start with when they start searching for apartments. Our website, our interactions with customers from that perspective, and then when they come to our property, we want them to be welcomed the minute they drive up or walk up to our property. So when we think about how a customer experiences us, there's the digital world, and then there's the physical world, and we want all of those folks we want everyone to be seamless. We train our employees, for example, on smiling the minute they come in, engaging people. We've done a lot of analysis, for example, on how our folks engage with our customers, and we found oftentimes that they'll wait until the customer kind of walks in, gets about 3/4 of the way to their desk, and then they will engage them. And we want them engaged the minute they open the door. So they stand up and walk over and say hello, that kind of thing. When we build a building, we think about the flow of the customer, where they're going to go, how they're going to flow through, where they park, how they enter the building, and then how the building feel, inside from a physical perspective. So it's a huge issue, and what kind of buildings do you build? How do you merchandise it? Do you have lots of small apartments or big apartments, or it depends on what's happening or what you're thinking about in terms of merchandising to those customers. So it's all definitely customer centric.
Perfect. Well, thank you. That answered my question. So thank you.
Absolutely.
And
We're
then
at 12:30, Rick. I know you have a pretty hard stop. Can we do one more question?
Sure.
Okay.
all right, Blake Bunger, last question.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for the time.
Sure, Blake.
Curious about, well, by the way, won the award this year. Curious about your journey as a leader, and did you just wake up one day and say, oh, whoa, I'm the head of Camden? Or were you always a leader from the time that you were in Cub Scouts or whatever you were doing at the time that you were young? We'd love to kind of hear about that progression and when you started saying, okay, I'm ready for this, or, like you said, maybe you weren't ready, but you were jumping into those positions, but I'd love to hear.
Sure. So I think generally I was pretty entrepreneurial from day one. I mean, I was, but I was not so much a leader per se. And when I was in college, for example, I had to figure out how to pay for it, and so I had to figure out all kinds of different ways to make money. And from working at the university to, I was somebody told me I was part of a fraternity, and so I was a Sigma Chi, and I went to when I first joined on the weekend, people cooked some of the house members cooked the dinners because the chefs were gone, or the people that did it during the week were gone, and they told me they paid $15 per meal, and so I became a cook, and I cooked 3 meals on the weekend, which was worth $45. And in 1972, $45 is a lot of money. And so, so I was always kind of looking for, sort of forced to figure out how to make money. And then over time, what I found was that that led me to then I'd have a problem with something, and so I thought, I'm going to go solve that problem. And that led to more leadership roles, like, oh, you got to go on a committee, who's going to run the committee, and so I became a leader in college. I was the president of my fraternity, primarily because they paid $300 a month plus free room and board, and so it was like, okay, I could go be president. When I got out of school, it was a whole different animal. And every time you graduate from something, right, you're at the top, and then you go to the bottom again, right? And so when I graduated from college and I got a job in Houston, I was a staff accountant, and I really didn't understand accounting. I mean, I got an accounting degree, but you really don't know what to do until you actually sit down and do it, right? And then that was more. So it was hard to be a green grad and be a leader. But over time, what I figured out was that the more you knew and the more people that you could get on your team, the better it was for you from a career perspective, and then it just kind of took off over. I say over. I started in 1976. I've only had out of school. I've only had one job out of school. It's morphed into this, and so once you get into, you're constantly having to reinvent yourself and change because the world changes around you all the time, and so. I think it's sort of like this. I think of it, my leadership skills sort of developed over time. And think about it this way. I use this sort of analogy. If you think about playing baseball and you get up and the first time you swing, you strike out, and then you work on it. Somebody helps you with your swing and tells you to hold the bat back and spread your legs out a little bit more. And then all of a sudden you get a hit after a bunch of strikeouts and you're on first and you're like, wow, that's pretty good. And then you get consistent and you're decent and you get on first now and then all of a sudden you start getting more power, you hit doubles and triples, and then pretty much you're hitting home runs and you're getting on base more than you're not. And all of a sudden, do you think about it though? You don't think about it, you just keep doing it. And as long as you're continuing to improve your skills in your business by never stop learning, and then you're improving your leadership skills, then people will recruit you to be a leader no matter what, because you need leaders and you need people that can solve problems in business or problems in the public stuff they do, and that's when you get down to the bottom line. The CEOs generally are the ones who solves some business problems as they came up, and the problem is either how do I improve my revenue, how do I lower expenses, how do I move from this market to that market, how do I grow, all those kinds of things are challenges that any business knows or has, and so it's about I don't think you're born a leader or born, an entrepreneur that just makes you that. I think what has to happen is you have to, I have sort of 3 things that I think about. These are things that you control personally. One is for me, I always worked harder than anybody else and was the go-to person. And whether it was my job or not, and he can figure that out. Go ask him to do it, right? And so work harder than anybody else and be the go-to person. Second was never stop learning. I said that before, which is, the world's changing every 3 years. It changes 2 to 3, sometimes faster because of technology or whatever. And so you have to adapt and never stop learning. And a lot of people will have a job and they'll just have their job and they focus on their job and they're pretty tunnel vision. And they don't think about the jobs around them. They don't think about how the business really works, or how does it work relative to the economy? How does it work relative to what's going on in the world? And so that never stop learning piece is broaden the horizon, figure out how everything works. And then all of a sudden you're more valuable to people. And then the third and most important part of it is take risk. A lot of people will not take risk. They just, and risk is not just money. It's more getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your personal space, and saying, look, I'm willing to go take that risk. And what people do is they get comfortable. They're making good pay. They're doing okay. They've got families. There are all these other things to do. And what they do is they feel pretty good about the world. And they don't take risks. They don't push outside the box. And then if you get stuck, then what happens is, and the world changes and you don't have adaptable skills and you aren't the go-to person, you're the first layoff, or you're the first person, the casualty that happens. And so if you do those 3 things and you control them, no one else does, then you can adapt yourself. You want to be a leader, go be a leader, figure out how to do it. Right. So that to me is the right way to do it. So I don't think I was born a leader or born an entrepreneur. I just think that I needed to be, because I needed to pay the rent and I needed to pay for the things I needed. And then it just adapted over time. And then when I got good at it, I just kind of kept doing it.
Very good. Thanks.
Okay.
What an awesome answer. And we are recording this and it will be on our website. I know I'm going to re-listen to that part because I just learned a lot. Okay, Ric, we are going to let you go. I do want to end with, and this is probably not a short question, but when you were talking about problem solving, I will never forget a story you told when you were an inductee about not being able to come up with a number when you were Camden Public.
Yep.
And your solution was found in going home and helping your daughter with her homework. And you got in the shower and suddenly the number came to you. And really the broader story to me in that was that you found a solution through service.
Yep.
Do you continue to find, is that why you do so much in the community? Is that your solutions pool, is giving back?
Yeah. I think the work, if you think about the community is, so Camden is part of the community, right? And Camden pays my bills every day and help me build my house, and everything I have relates to Camden. But Camden is part of the community, and without the community, there is no Camden. And so once I got to a point where I got that, and it wasn't just about let's see how big we can get, or let's see how much money you can make, or let's see what accolades you can get, or anything like that. Then it's like, wait a minute, I need to make sure my community is good, and I need to make sure that and when you get down to when you think about all the things that you see in your community, guess what? It was done by someone. And the question is, who does that? And to me, it's about giving back to the community. And I know that there's a lot of public partnerships that happen. A lot of private guys like me do public stuff, and they do it because they want to improve the community over time, and they want to give back to the community and make it a better place than when they got there. And it's more about the concept that business doesn't do well if the community doesn't do well, and the community doesn't do well if business doesn't do well. And so it's just a circular thing, and it gets down to what you want to, how you want to be as a person, and how you want your community to look. And when you have the ability to help build the community, then you do it. And I think that my service in all of my community stuff makes me stronger at Camden. It makes me a better person. It gives me the ability to do more than I could have ever done if I just stayed in the business world and just focused on Camden or whatever business you're in. So, yeah, I think there's a yin and a yang and a balance. And I remember that story because I was having such trouble with trying to make this deal work. And you sometimes just got to pull back and relax and focus on something else. And when you do, the answer comes.
You have to get out of your own head.
Yep, you do.
Sometimes, yeah.
Oh, no question. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this has been absolutely excellent. Thank you so much for your time today. We know you're due at a luncheon that you're now late for. So thank you so much. And
Okay.
it's so good to see everyone. Y'all have a good one.
Thanks, Meredith.